War in Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan began in 2001 after the September 11th attacks in the United States, when a U.S.-led coalition invaded Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban government that had been hosting the group. The initial phase of the war quickly toppled the Taliban regime, but the conflict evolved into a long insurgency as Taliban forces regrouped and fought against Afghan government forces and international troops. Over 2 decades, the war became one of the longest military conflicts involving the United States, shaping global counterterrorism strategy and regional politics. It finally ended in 2021 when US and NATO forces withdrew and the Taliban regained control of the country. Iraq War. The Iraq War began in 2003 when a coalition led by the United States and the United Kingdom invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein's government. The invasion was initially justified by concerns about weapons of mass destruction and links to terrorism, although those weapons were never found. After the government collapsed, Iraq experienced years of insurgency, sectarian violence, and political instability as different groups competed for power. The conflict reshaped the Middle East by weakening Iraqi state institutions, increasing Iranian influence in the region, and creating conditions that later allowed extremist groups like ISIS to emerge. Russo-Georgian War. The Russo-Georgian War took place in 2008 between Russia and Georgia over the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Tensions had been building for years as Georgia sought closer ties with Western institutions such as NATO, while Russia supported the separatist territories. When fighting broke out, Russian forces quickly pushed into Georgian territory and decisively defeated the Georgian military within days. After the war, Russia recognized South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent states, though most of the world still considers them part of Georgia. The conflict demonstrated Russia's willingness to use military force in the post-Soviet space and foreshadowed later tensions with neighboring countries. Libyan Civil War. The Libyan Civil War began in 2011 during the Arab Spring when protests against the rule of Muammar Gaddafi escalated into armed rebellion. As government forces attempted to crush the uprising, a NATO-led coalition intervened with airstrikes to support rebel forces and protect civilians. The intervention eventually helped rebels overthrow and kill Gaddafi, but the collapse of the central government created a power vacuum. Libya soon fractured into rival governments, militias, and regional factions competing for control of the country. The conflict became one of the clearest examples of how the Arab Spring uprisings could transform into prolonged instability. Syrian Civil War. The Syrian Civil War began in 2011 when peaceful protests against President Bashar al-Assad were violently suppressed, sparking a nationwide uprising. The conflict quickly evolved into a complex war involving the Syrian government, multiple rebel groups, Kurdish forces, extremist organizations, and foreign powers such as Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the United States. The war devastated large parts of the country and triggered one of the largest refugee crises in modern history. It also became a major geopolitical battleground where regional and global powers supported different factions, turning the conflict into both a civil war and an international proxy struggle. War in Donbass. The war in Donbass started in 2014 in eastern Ukraine after political upheaval in Kiev and Russia's annexation of Crimea. Pro-Russian separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions declared independence and fought against Ukrainian government forces. Russia was widely accused of supporting the separatists with weapons, fighters, and political backing. Although ceasefires were attempted through international negotiations, the conflict continued as a low-intensity war for years. The Donbass conflict was a major step in the deterioration of relations between Russia and the West and set the stage for the larger war that would begin in 2022. Yemeni Civil War. The Yemeni Civil War began in 2014 when the Houthi movement seized the capital city of Sana'a and forced the internationally recognized government to flee. In 2015, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia intervened militarily to restore the government, turning the conflict into a major regional proxy war. The war has involved multiple factions, including government forces, Houthis, southern separatists, and various militias. The conflict has caused one of the world's most severe humanitarian crises, with widespread food shortages, displacement, and infrastructure destruction. It also highlights the broader rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran in the Middle East. Nagorno-Karabakh War. The 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War was fought between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Although tensions had existed since the collapse of the Soviet Union, large-scale fighting erupted again in 2020. Azerbaijan, with strong support from Turkey and advanced drone technology, regained significant territory that had been controlled by Armenian forces for decades. The war lasted about 6 weeks before a Russia-brokered ceasefire ended the fighting. The conflict showed how modern technology and shifting alliances could quickly change the balance of power in regional conflicts. Tigray War. The Tigray War began in Ethiopia in 2020 after tensions between the Ethiopian federal government and the regional government of Tigray escalated into armed conflict. Federal forces, supported by allied regional militias and Eritrean troops, launched a military operation against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The war quickly became one of the deadliest conflicts of the 21st century, involving large-scale displacement, severe humanitarian crises, and accusations of war crimes by multiple sides. The conflict deeply affected Ethiopia's political stability and highlighted how internal political tensions can escalate into full-scale war. Russia-Ukraine War. The Russia-Ukraine War expanded dramatically in 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The invasion followed years of tension after the annexation of Crimea and the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Russia aimed to rapidly defeat Ukrainian forces and exert control over the country, but Ukraine mounted a strong resistance supported by large-scale military and economic assistance from Western countries. The war quickly became one of the most important geopolitical conflicts of the 21st century because it reshaped European security, triggered major economic sanctions, and revived global tensions between Russia and Western powers. Israel-Hamas War. The Israel-Hamas War escalated dramatically in 2023 after Hamas launched a large attack from the Gaza Strip into Israel. Israel responded with extensive military operations in Gaza aimed at destroying Hamas's military capabilities. The conflict quickly became one of the most closely watched wars in the world because of its humanitarian impact, regional implications, and the long history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Fighting and political tensions surrounding Gaza have influenced diplomacy across the Middle East and drawn international attention to one of the region's most enduring conflicts.